I found the wedding invitation in my mailbox on a Tuesday morning, and I knew immediately that opening it would destroy me. The envelope was cream-coloured, expensive paper with gold embossing. Name, Adrian Westfield, written in elegant calligraphy that someone had spent hours perfecting. But it was the return address that made my hands shake. Ethan Cole and Rebecca Martinez. I stood there in the hallway of my apartment building for what felt like an eternity, staring at those two names printed together like they belonged that way. Like they'd always belonged that way. Like I was just supposed to smile and show up and celebrate the fact that my best friend was marrying the woman I loved. I didn't open it. Not then. I walked back upstairs, set it on my kitchen counter, and stared at it for 3 days straight. By the fourth day, I'd made my decision. Not about whether I'd go to the wedding. I already knew I wouldn't. My decision was darker than that, more permanent. I decided that if they were going to erase me from their story, pretend that the last 8 years meant nothing, then I would make sure they understood exactly what they'd taken from me. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. Let me tell you how we got here. Let me tell you about the friendship I thought would last forever, and how the two people I trusted most in the world systematically destroyed everything I was. 8 years ago, I met Ethan Cole on the first day of our master's program in architectural engineering at Portland State. We were both 24, both desperate to prove ourselves in a field that chewed up and spit out the weak. The program was notorious. 60 students started, maybe 20 would finish. The professors made it clear from day one that they didn't care about our feelings, our sleep schedules, or our social lives. They cared about whether we could design buildings that wouldn't collapse and kill people. Ethan sat next to me in structural systems. Analysis, our hardest first semester course. Professor Winters was walking us through a problem on the board, something about calculating load-bearing capacity for a high-rise under seismic stress. I was following along, taking notes, when I heard Ethan mutter under his breath, "That's wrong. The lateral force coefficient is off by a factor of 3. I glanced over at him. He was tall, athletic build, with dark blonde hair that was always slightly too long. He had the kind of face that made people trust him instantly, open, friendly, with these bright green eyes that seemed genuinely interested in whatever you were saying. He looked like he should be modeling for outdoor gear catalogs, not hunched over engineering equations. "You sure?" I whispered back. He showed me his notebook. He was right. The professor had made an error that would have resulted in a building design that failed catastrophically in an earthquake. I raised my hand and pointed it out. Professor Winters checked. His work, admitted the mistake, and fixed it. After class, Ethan bought me coffee. "Adrian, right?" he said, extending his hand. "Thanks for backing me up in there. Some people would have just let it slide." "Some people would have let a building fall down," I replied, shaking his hand. "I'm too neurotic for that." He laughed, this genuine, full-bodied laugh that made me like him immediately. "We're going to get along great." He was right about that too. At least, I thought he was right. For 8 years, I believed we were getting along great. I believed we were brothers in everything but blood. We became inseparable after that first week. Study partners, obviously, but it went deeper. We balanced each other perfectly. I was methodical, detail-oriented, the guy who would spend 16 hours checking and rechecking calculations to make sure they were perfect. Ethan was creative, intuitive, able to visualize entire buildings in his head and sketch them out in minutes. Where I got bogged down in perfectionism, he pushed forward with confidence. Where he got reckless with innovative designs, I pulled him back with practical constraints. We pulled all-nighters together in the studio, surviving on energy drinks and cold pizza. We failed our first structural dynamics midterm together. Ethan got a 47. I got a 52, then studied for 96 hours straight and aced the final. We were there for each other through everything: his father's heart attack sophomore year, my mother's cancer diagnosis, his brutal breakup with his college girlfriend, my crippling imposter syndrome that made me want to quit at least once a semester. By the time we graduated, we weren't just friends, we were partners. We had a plan: work for a few years at established firms, learn the business, make connections, then start our own architectural practice. Cole and Westfield. We'd already designed the logo. I took a position at Morrison Hayes Architecture, a mid-sized firm in downtown Portland that specialized in sustainable commercial buildings. Ethan went to Blackwell Associates, a bigger outfit that handled large-scale residential developments. We lived 2 blocks apart in northwest Portland, met for drinks every Thursday, played basketball every Sunday morning, took annual ski trips to Mount Hood. Everything was exactly how it was supposed to be. My career was progressing steadily. I was good at my job, maybe even great. I led my first project at 27, a LEED certified office building that came in under budget and won a regional design award. Ethan was thriving too, rapidly moving up at Blackwell, impressing clients with his charisma and vision. Then 4 years ago, I met Rebecca. I was at a gallery opening in the Pearl District, one of those events I normally avoided, but my boss had insisted I go to network. I was standing in front of an abstract painting, pretending to understand it, when I heard a voice behind me say, "It looks like a migraine, doesn't it?" I turned around, and there she was, Rebecca Martinez, 5'6", with long dark hair, brown eyes that had these gold flecks in them, and a smile that made me forget whatever pretentious thing I'd been about to say. She was wearing a black dress and had a glass of wine in her hand, and she looked like the only real person in a room full of people performing authenticity. "I was thinking more like a tornado of paint swatches," I said, "but migraine works too." She laughed. "I'm Rebecca, and I'm only here because my friend's dating the artist, and she forced me to come." "You?" "Adrian, my boss forced me. Apparently, I need to expand my professional network or something." "What do you do?" "Architectural engineer. I design buildings." Her eyes lit up. "Actually design them? Or just, like, make them look pretty?" "I make sure they don't fall down. The looking pretty part is somebody else's job." "That's incredibly cool," she said, and she meant it. She wasn't just being polite. She asked me real questions about load calculations, about sustainable design, about the difference between architects and engineers. She was a graphic designer, freelance, and she understood the creative technical balance in a way most people didn't. We talked for 2 hours. I got her number. We went on our first date 3 days later, Vietnamese food, and a walk along the waterfront. Our second date was the following weekend. By the third date, I knew I was falling for her. Rebecca was unlike anyone I'd ever been with. She was smart, funny, passionate about her work. She called me out when I was being too rigid or obsessive. She understood my weird hours and deadline crunches because she had her own. She made me want to be better, not in that toxic self-improvement way, but in a way that felt natural, like she saw the best version of me and just assumed that's who I was. 3 months in, I introduced her to Ethan. We met at a brewery in southeast Portland, one of Ethan's favorite spots. I was nervous. I remember that clearly. Ethan's opinion mattered to me. He'd met my previous girlfriends and always been polite, but I could tell he didn't think they were right for me. With Rebecca, I needed him to see what I saw. I needed him to understand why this was different. "So you're the famous Ethan," Rebecca said, shaking his hand. "Adrian talks about you constantly. I was starting to think you were an imaginary friend he invented to make himself sound more social." Ethan laughed. "And you're the reason he's been useless at work for the last 3 months. Adrian Westfield, distracted by a woman. Never thought I'd see the day." The three of us fell into an easy rhythm. Rebecca asked Ethan about his work, genuinely interested, and Ethan told stories that made her laugh. They bonded over their shared love of indie music and their mutual dislike of pretentious art gallery events. I sat there feeling this deep sense of rightness, my best friend and my girlfriend getting along perfectly. After Rebecca went to the bathroom, Ethan leaned over and said, "Adrian, she's incredible. Don't screw this up." "I'm trying not to," I said. "I'm serious. This one's a keeper. Whatever you have to do to make this work, do it." Looking back now, I wonder what he was really thinking in that moment. Was he already calculating, already seeing what he wanted and planning how to take it? Or did it come later, a slow corruption that I was too blind to see? Over the next 2 years, the three of us became a unit. Ethan was always around. Group dinners, concerts, weekend trips. If Rebecca and I were doing something, we'd invite Ethan. If Ethan had an event, we'd go together. It felt perfect. I had the woman I loved and my best friend, and they loved each other too, in that platonic way that made everything easy. Rebecca would cook dinner for the three of us at my apartment. Ethan would bring wine and help her in the kitchen while I set the table. We'd stay up late talking about everything, our dreams, our fears, stupid philosophical debates about whether hot dogs were sandwiches. Rebecca would fall asleep on my shoulder on the couch, and Ethan would throw a blanket over us before letting himself out. I trusted them both completely, with everything. That was my first mistake. The cracks started so small I didn't notice them, little things that only make sense in hindsight. Rebecca started bringing up Ethan more often in casual conversation. "Ethan showed me this cool design technique today. Ethan recommended this new restaurant we should try. Ethan thinks you're being too hard on yourself about the Riverside project," people tell themselves. The betrayal just destroyed me in one way and I had to rebuild in another. What made me stronger was the choice to rebuild, the choice to keep going, the choice to trust again, love again, build again, even knowing how easily it could all collapse. That's the real revenge, I think. Not destroying them, not making them pay, but refusing to let their betrayal define my story, refusing to stay buried in the rubble of what they destroyed. They wanted to remove me from their lives so they could be happy. Instead, I removed myself and found my own happiness, better, deeper, more real than anything we had together. In the end, that's all any of us can do. Build something beautiful, protect it fiercely, and if it gets destroyed, build something new. Stronger foundations this time, deeper supports, better load distribution, built to last. I'm Adrian Westfield. I'm a structural engineer. I design things that stand up to stress and weather and time, including myself, and I'm still standing. When did she start seeing Ethan separately from me? I couldn't pinpoint it. Maybe it had always been happening and I'd just been too trusting to question it. They'd grab coffee if they were both downtown. They'd meet for lunch if I was stuck in meetings. "We're friends too," Rebecca said, when I mentioned it casually, not even jealously. "Is that okay?" "Of course," I said, because what else was I supposed to say? Was I supposed to tell my girlfriend she couldn't be friends with my best friend? That would have been insane, controlling. I wasn't that guy, except maybe I should have been. Ethan started cancelling on our Thursday night tradition. "Work," he said. "Big client meeting, deadline crunch." I understood. I had the same pressures. But he never suggested rescheduling. The basketball games on Sunday mornings dropped from weekly to bi-weekly to monthly. Again, reasonable excuses. His knee was bothering him. He'd been traveling. He was tired. Then Rebecca started cancelling plans. Small things at first. "I'm sorry, I'm just exhausted. Can we reschedule date night?" "My client needs revisions by tomorrow. I have to work late." "I'm not feeling well. I think I'm coming down with something." I told myself it was normal. Relationships evolved. The intense, early phase mellowed into something more stable. People got busy. Work got demanding. We were all adults with responsibilities. But there were other things. tiny inconsistencies that my engineer's brain catalogued without my conscious awareness. Rebecca saying she was home working, but I could hear traffic in the background when she called. Ethan mentioning a movie he'd seen, then looking uncomfortable when I asked who he went with. Rebecca's phone screen lighting up with a text notification, and her angling it away from me just slightly before checking it. I'm a detail-oriented person. It's what makes me good at my job. You can't design a 40-story building without paying attention to every single connection, every load path, every potential failure point. But in my personal life, I'd apparently decided to trust instead of verify. I'd decided that the people I loved deserved the benefit of the doubt. That was my second mistake. The first real crack happened on a Friday night, about 18 months ago. Rebecca and I had planned a weekend getaway to Cannon Beach, something we'd been talking about for months. I'd booked a hotel with an ocean view, made dinner reservations at a restaurant she'd been wanting to try. I was excited. We'd both been so busy that we hadn't had real quality time in weeks. Thursday night, she called me. "Adrian, I'm so sorry. My biggest client just called with an emergency rebrand. They need initial concepts by Monday morning. I can't go this weekend." My disappointment must have been obvious because she quickly added, I know, I feel terrible, but this client is 40% of my income. I can't say no." "I understand," I said, and I did. Freelance life was unpredictable. "We'll reschedule." "You're the best. I'll make it up to you, I promise." Friday after work, I stopped by Rebecca's apartment with Thai takeout, her favorite, figuring we could at least have dinner together if we couldn't have the weekend. I had a key. We'd been together for almost 2 years by then. It wasn't weird for me to let myself in. The apartment was dark, empty. I called her. No answer. Texted, "Hey, I'm at your place with food. Where are you?" 20 minutes later, she responded, "At the office still. Going to be a long night. Sorry, should have told you." I ate the Thai food alone in her apartment, watching Netflix on her couch, waiting for her to come home. By midnight, I gave up and went back to my place. The next morning, Saturday, I was at my own office catching up on work when I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Adrian, it's Nicole, Ethan's sister." I knew Nicole, though not well. She lived in Seattle, worked in tech, visited Portland occasionally. "Hey, Nicole, what's up?" "I'm in town visiting Mom, and I wanted to surprise Ethan for lunch, but he's not answering his phone. Do you know where he is? He mentioned you guys might have plans." "No." "Plans with me?" I said. "Sorry, maybe try his office?" I did. They said he took a personal day. I thought maybe you two were off doing something. After we hung up, I sat there, staring at my computer screen without seeing it. Ethan had taken a personal day. Rebecca was supposedly working all weekend. Neither of them were answering their phones. I'm not a suspicious person by nature. I believe in logic, evidence, data. But in that moment, something cold settled in my chest. I opened my laptop's browser and went to Find My Friends, an app Rebecca and I had installed for convenience, so we could see where each other were if we needed to meet up or coordinate. Her location dot was in Northwest Portland. Not her apartment, not her office. It was at a hotel, the Sentinel, a boutique place in the Pearl District. I stared at that dot for a long time, watching it not move. There could be innocent explanations. She could be meeting her client there. She could be using their lobby as a workspace. There were a dozen reasonable possibilities, but my hands were shaking. I called Ethan, straight to voicemail. Called again. Same. I called Rebecca. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. I got in my car and drove to the Sentinel. The entire drive, I told myself I was being paranoid, I was being crazy. This was insane, jealous boyfriend behavior. When I got there, I'd feel like an idiot. Rebecca would be in the lobby with her laptop and her client, and I'd have to explain why I'd tracked her location and shown up unannounced like a stalker. But when I walked into the hotel lobby, she wasn't there. I stood there for 15 minutes, pretending to look at my phone, watching the elevator. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. This was stupid. I was being stupid. I should leave. Then the elevator doors opened and Ethan stepped out. He was alone, wearing jeans and a casual button-down shirt. Not work clothes. He looked relaxed, happy, checking his phone. As he walked toward the exit, he hadn't seen me. I was partially hidden behind a pillar. I watched him leave. Then I waited. 5 minutes later, the elevator opened again. Rebecca stepped out wearing a dress I'd never seen before. Her hair was different, styled in a way she only did for special occasions. She looked beautiful. She looked guilty. She walked past me without noticing, heading for the exit. I watched her push through the glass doors and disappear onto the street. I didn't confront them. Not then. I drove home, went inside my apartment, and sat on my couch in the dark. My brain was trying to construct innocent explanations. Maybe they'd been planning a surprise party for me. Maybe they'd been working on a joint project and needed a quiet space. Maybe there was a conference at the hotel and they'd both been attending. But I knew, on some deep, instinctive level, I knew I just didn't want to believe it yet. Over the next 3 months, I became someone I didn't recognize, someone I hated. I started checking Rebecca's location obsessively. I paid attention to every inconsistency, every cancelled plan, every vague explanation. I watched Ethan for tells, for signs, for anything that would confirm what I was terrified to admit. They were careful, I'll give them that. They never showed up to group events together. If we all had plans and one of them cancelled, the other would always show up. They never touched in front of me, never exchanged loaded glances, never gave me any obvious evidence. But the circumstantial evidence piled up like snow in a blizzard. Rebecca working late on the same nights. Ethan was busy with client dinners. Her phone always face down now, passcode changed to something I didn't know. New lingerie in her drawer that she never wore for me. A hickey on her collarbone that she claimed was from her curling iron, even though I'd never seen her use a curling iron in 2 years. Ethan acting weird when I mentioned Rebecca. I changing the subject quickly. His eyes not quite meeting mine when we talked. That easy camaraderie we'd always had, becoming strained, like we were reading from a script we'd both memorized, but didn't believe in anymore. I kept waiting for one of them to slip up, to leave a text open, to be seen somewhere together, to give me undeniable proof that would force me to act. But they were too smart for that. So I did something I'm not proud of, something that proved I'd already lost myself in this nightmare. I installed spyware on Rebecca's phone. It happened during a weekend when she left her phone on my kitchen counter to take a shower. I had a 15-minute window. My hands were shaking so badly I almost couldn't type. The app I installed was invisible, undetectable, running in the background. It would forward me copies of all her texts, show me her location history, even record phone calls if I wanted. I felt like a criminal, like a stalker, like everything I'd ever judged other people for being. But I was also drowning, desperately trying to understand if the ground beneath me was solid or if I'd been standing on quicksand all along. The texts started coming through that night. Most were innocent. Conversations with her mom, her friends, her clients. Normal stuff. But then, buried in there, I found the thread with Ethan. It was saved under a different name in her phone, Jamie Client. Clever. If I'd ever picked up her phone and seen a text notification from Jamie Client, I'd have thought nothing of it. The texts were coded, vague enough to have plausible deniability, but clear enough that I understood immediately. Ethan. Can't stop thinking about yesterday. When can I see you again? Rebecca. Soon, but we have to be more careful. He almost noticed I was late. Ethan. I hate this. I hate lying to him. Rebecca. Me too, but we can't tell him yet. He'll fall apart. We need to wait for the right time. Ethan. There's no right time for this, but you're right. I just wish I could wake up next to you every morning instead of pretending we're just friends. Rebecca. Soon, I promise. I love you. Ethan. I love you too. I read those texts sitting on my bathroom floor at 2 in the morning, and I vomited into the toilet. Then I read them again and again and again. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted there to be some other explanation. But the texts went back 8 months. 8 months of them talking every day. 8 months of I miss you and I love you and planning when they could see each other without me knowing. 8 months of them discussing how to handle telling Adrian and whether I could handle it and if there was a way to minimize the damage. They weren't even sorry. That was the part that destroyed me. They weren't wrestling with guilt or shame. They were just inconvenienced by my existence, annoyed that they had to sneak around, impatient for the day when they could be together. Openly, and I would be, what? Expected to understand, to forgive, to just disappear from both their lives gracefully? I didn't sleep that night, or the next. I went to work and performed my job on autopilot, reviewing structural calculations and meeting with clients while my brain screamed in the background. I smiled at Rebecca when she kissed me goodbye. I laughed at Ethan's jokes when we grabbed lunch. I didn't confront them because I needed more. I needed to understand the full scope of what they'd done. How long had this really been going on? How many lies had they told? Who else knew? So I kept reading the texts. I kept tracking her location. I cross-referenced her movements with Ethan's calendar that he'd shared with me years ago and never thought to revoke access to. The pattern was meticulous. They saw each other every Thursday evening, the night that used to be my standing plans with Ethan. While I was home alone thinking my best friend was busy with work, he was with my girlfriend. They met for afternoon coffee breaks that stretched into 2-hour gaps in the middle of workdays. They took a weekend trip to Seattle together, telling me that Rebecca was visiting a friend and Ethan was checking out a potential project site. They'd been to the Sentinel Hotel 12 times in 8 months. I documented everything: screenshots, location logs, timeline correlations. My engineering brain did what it does best. I built a comprehensive structural analysis of their betrayal, every support beam and connection point, every load path of lies flowing from one deception to the next. And then I found the email. Rebecca had forgotten to log out of her email on my laptop one night. I wasn't even snooping. I opened the browser to check something for work, and her inbox was just there. I should have closed it immediately, should have respected her privacy, but I didn't. I searched for Ethan's name. The most recent email was from 3 weeks ago. Subject line, "Next steps." Rebecca, I've been thinking about what you said. You're right. We can't keep doing this forever. Adrian deserves to know the truth, even if it destroys him. I think we should tell him together next month after his Riverside project wraps up. That way he'll at least have a professional win to cushion the blow. What do you think? Ethan. Next month feels right. He'll be devastated, but he's stronger than we give him credit for. He'll survive this. And maybe eventually he'll even understand. We didn't plan this, Becca. It just happened. We fell in love. That's not a crime. Rebecca. I know, I just hate that we're hurting him. He's a good person. He deserves better than this. Ethan. He does. But we deserve to be happy too, and we can't be happy living this lie anymore. 1 more month, then we tell him everything. We'll help him through it, find him a good therapist if he needs it, make sure he has support. Then we can finally stop hiding. Rebecca. 1 more month, then we start our life together for real. I can't wait. Ethan. Me neither. I love you, Becca. Rebecca. I love you too, more than I've ever loved anyone. I sat there staring at that email for an hour. They were going to tell me. Next month. After my project wrapped up, like I was a bomb they were carefully diffusing. They'd even planned to help me find a therapist. How thoughtful of them. They'd cushion my devastation with professional support while they rode off into their new life together. He'll survive this? Would I? I honestly didn't know anymore. That night I went for a walk. It was raining, typical Portland weather, cold and miserable. I walked for miles without any destination, just moving because staying still felt impossible. I ended up at a bridge overlooking the Willamette River, watching the water move beneath me. I thought about jumping. I didn't. But I thought about it. Instead, I went home, opened my laptop, and started planning. Not my death. Something else. Something that would make them understand that I wasn't just going to survive this and quietly exit their story. Something that would make them feel even a fraction of what they'd done to me. If they wanted to destroy my life, then I would destroy theirs first, but not with violence, not with anything crude or obvious. I would do what I do best. I would engineer their collapse with precision and patience, calculating every load and stress point until the entire structure of their lives came crashing down. I had 1 month. They'd given me that much. 1 month before they planned to tell me the truth. I wouldn't need that long. The first step was information gathering. I needed to understand their vulnerabilities, their pressure points, the places where applied force would do maximum damage. I started with Ethan. I'd known him for 8 years. I knew his career ambitions, his insecurities, his relationships with his colleagues. I knew that he was up for partner at Blackwell Associates, a promotion he'd been working toward for 3 years. I knew that his reputation was built on being the charming, trustworthy guy who clients loved and co-workers wanted to work with. Most importantly, I knew about the shortcuts he'd taken. Nothing illegal, nothing that would put anyone in danger. But Ethan had always been willing to bend rules when it suited him. He'd fudge numbers on feasibility studies to make projects look more viable than they were. He'd take credit for junior associates' work. He'd schmooze clients with expense account dinners that weren't quite within company policy. Small things. Things everyone in the industry did, but things that would look very bad if compiled into a comprehensive document and sent to the right people. I had access to his cloud storage. We'd set up shared accounts years ago for our eventual firm, and he'd never changed the passwords. Over the next 2 weeks, I downloaded everything. Every project file, every email, every internal memo. I spent my evenings combing through them, building a case against my best friend with the same methodical attention I'd give to structural analysis. I found enough to ruin him. Emails where he explicitly told junior staff to inflate cost projections, text messages with clients where he promised outcomes he knew weren't achievable. A feasibility study for a residential development where he deliberately overlooked soil instability issues because the client didn't want to pay for proper geotechnical analysis. That last one was particularly damning. The project had been built. People were living there. If anyone looked closely at the actual soil conditions versus what Ethan had reported, he'd be professionally destroyed. At minimum, he'd lose his architectural license. At worst, he'd face civil liability if the buildings ever experienced problems. I created a comprehensive dossier, 147 pages of evidence, meticulously sourced and cross-referenced. Then I saved it and moved on to Rebecca. Rebecca was harder. She was freelanced, self-employed, no boss to report to, no company reputation to destroy. But she had clients, and clients cared about reliability, professionalism, and ethical behavior. I went through her computer while she was asleep next to me one night. She'd told me her password months ago before everything fell apart, back when we still trusted each other. Her laptop was in her bag in my living room. I waited until I heard her breathing deepen, then I slipped out of bed as carefully as possible. My hands were shaking as I opened her laptop. This felt different than the phone monitoring. More invasive, more wrong. But I was so far past caring about right and wrong. They'd taken everything from me. They didn't get to have boundaries anymore. I found her client files, her contracts, her ongoing projects, and I found something else. She'd been plagiarizing. Not everything, not even most things, but she had a folder of stock design elements that she'd downloaded from various sources, some free, some that weren't, and she'd been incorporating them into client work without proper licensing or attribution. In some cases, she'd presented them as her own original designs, again, not uncommon in the industry. Lots of designers used stock elements and modified them, but Rebecca had signed contracts with clients that explicitly stated all work would be original and owned by her. She'd charged premium rates based on that promise. If her clients knew she was using unlicensed stock elements, she'd face breach of contract claims. She'd lose clients, damage her reputation, possibly face legal action. I documented everything: screenshots, file metadata, purchase receipts showing what she'd actually paid for versus what she was using. Another dossier, smaller than Ethan's but just as devastating. Then I started phase 2, isolation. I needed them to be alone when everything collapsed. No support system, no allies, no one to help them rebuild. So I started subtly poisoning their relationships with everyone around them. For Ethan, I focused on his colleagues at Blackwell Associates. I'd met most of them at various events over the years. I knew who was competitive with Ethan, who resented his success, who was quietly gunning for the same partner position he wanted. I reached out to Marcus, one of Ethan's co-workers who'd been at the firm longer and felt passed over. I invited him for coffee, ostensibly to ask his advice about potentially joining Blackwell Associates myself. During that conversation, I casually mentioned projects where Ethan had taken credit for work that wasn't entirely his. Just observations, delivered innocently, as if I didn't know it was a big deal. Marcus's eyes lit up with vindication. I did the same with 2 other associates, planting seeds of doubt about Ethan's integrity, his work ethic, his qualifications. None of it was lies. Everything I said was technically true. I just made sure the information reached people who would use it against him. For Rebecca, I focused on her friend group. I'd met most of them through her over the past 2 years. I knew their dynamics, their insecurities, their gossip patterns. I knew that her best friend Sarah had been going through a bitter divorce. I knew that Jennifer was struggling with her own relationship issues. I started sharing very carefully, very selectively, that Rebecca had been acting distant lately, that I was worried about her, that she'd been secretive about where she was going and who she was seeing. I never said I suspected an affair. I just expressed concern like a worried boyfriend who wanted his girlfriend's friends to check in on her. The result was that Rebecca's friends started asking her invasive questions. Where had she been? Was everything okay? She seemed different lately. Was she sure Adrian was treating her well? She told me about it, frustrated. Sarah's being so weird. She keeps asking if I'm happy, like she thinks you're being controlling or something. That's strange, I said, holding her while my stomach churned with acid. Maybe she's projecting from her divorce? Maybe. The isolation strategy was working. Ethan was increasingly paranoid at work, sensing that his colleagues were turning on him, but not understanding why. Rebecca was pulling away from her friends because their questions made her uncomfortable, reminded her of her own guilt. Phase 3 was the hardest. I had to make them think everything was fine with me. I became the perfect boyfriend and the perfect best friend. I planned elaborate date nights with Rebecca. I showed up to Ethan's apartment with beer and pizza for video game sessions, like we used to have. I was attentive, cheerful, supportive. "You've been so great lately," Rebecca told me one night. We were in bed and she had her head on my chest. "I feel like we've been in a rough patch, but things are getting better, aren't they?" "Yeah," I said, stroking her hair while hatred burned through my veins. "They are?" I love you, Adrian. I love you too. The lie tasted like poison, but I swallowed it down. With Ethan, I was even more careful. I confided in him about work stress, asked his advice, told him how much his friendship meant to me. I don't know what I'd do without you, man, I said one night over drinks. You've been my rock through everything. He looked uncomfortable, guilty. You're my best friend, Adrian. That's never going to change. Good, I said, because I'm going to need you soon. I'm thinking about proposing to Rebecca. His face went pale. What? I want to marry her. I was going to ask for your help picking out a ring. You know her taste better than I do, probably. Will you help me? He couldn't say no, not without revealing why he'd know her taste so intimately, not without destroying the lie they'd been living. Of course, he said weakly. I'd be honored. We went ring shopping the next weekend. I watched him squirm as we looked at diamonds, as I talked about proposals and weddings and our future together. He kept trying to dissuade me subtly. Are you sure you're ready? What's the rush? Maybe wait until the timing's better? But I steamrolled through every objection. I bought a ring, 2.5 carats, platinum band, cost me $8,000. I showed it to Ethan and I swear I saw him die a little inside. She's going to love it, he said. I know, I replied. Thanks for helping me with this. You're a real friend. I never actually planned to propose. The ring was just another tool, another pressure point. But they didn't know that. That night, Ethan sent Rebecca a panicked text. We need to tell him now. He bought a ring. We can't let this go any further. Rebecca replied, we stick to the plan. 1 more week, then after his project. Meeting. We can't do it now. It'll destroy him right before his biggest presentation. 1 more week. I read their texts and smiled. The 4th week arrived. My Riverside project was scheduled for final presentation on a Thursday. If I passed this review, I'd be promoted to senior structural engineer, a significant step in my career. Rebecca and Ethan planned to tell me the truth that Friday, giving me the weekend to process before I had to face work again on Monday. They'd thought of everything. How considerate. Monday of that week, I sent the dossier on Ethan to the executive board at Blackwell Associates, not from my email, from an anonymous account I'd set up specifically for this purpose. Subject line, ethical concerns regarding Ethan Cole. The email was professional, concerned, carefully worded. I'm a concerned colleague who has observed patterns of behavior that I believe require investigation. Please see the attached documentation. I have no personal vendetta against Mr. Cole, but I believe the firm has a responsibility to ensure all projects meet ethical and safety standards. The attachment was everything I'd compiled, every fudged number, every plagiarized presentation, every corner cut, and, most damningly, the full analysis of the soil stability issues on the residential development that Ethan had glossed over. I sent a similar email to the licensing board flagging the same project for investigation. Then I waited. Tuesday, I sent Rebecca's dossier to her 3 biggest clients. Again, anonymous email, professional tone. I'm someone who has worked in the design industry for years, and I believe you should be aware that elements of the work you've received may not be originally created as claimed. Please see the attached analysis. The attachments showed the stock elements she'd used, the licensing violations, and the specific clauses in her contracts that she'd breached. I included links to the original sources where she'd obtained the designs, complete with timestamps proving she'd downloaded them before creating the client work. Then I waited some more. Wednesday, things started moving. Ethan got called into a meeting at Blackwell Associates. He texted me after. Weird day at work, some ethics thing, probably nothing. I responded, I'm sure it's fine. You're the most ethical guy I know. Rebecca got an email from one of her clients requesting an urgent meeting to discuss project deliverables. She was nervous but thought it was just normal client anxiety. They're probably just being demanding, I told her. You always deliver great work. Don't stress about it. Thursday was my presentation, the Riverside Project Review. I stood in front of the partners at Morrison Hayes and walked them through 2 years of work, a $50 million mixed-use development with residential, retail, and office space. I designed the structural system, managed the engineering team, coordinated with architects and contractors. It was the biggest thing I'd ever done. I nailed it. Every question, every concern, every technical detail. At the end, the senior partner shook my hand and said, "Adrian, this is exceptional work. You'll be hearing about your promotion shortly." I should have been elated. This was everything I'd been working toward, but all I felt was hollow. I texted Ethan and Rebecca. "Presentation went great. Want to celebrate tonight? Drinks at 7? They both agreed. Of course they did. This was their last night of the lie. Tomorrow they'd tell me everything. Tonight they'd play their parts one final time. We met at a bar in Pearl District, the same one where I'd first introduced them. Fitting, I suppose. Rebecca kissed me when I arrived. Ethan clapped me on the shoulder. We ordered drinks and toasted to my success. "To Adrian," Ethan said, raising his glass. "Most talented engineer I know." "To us," Rebecca added. "The best team." "To us," I echoed. We drank, we laughed. We talked about nothing important. And the entire time I watched them. The way they were careful not to make eye contact with each other. The way Rebecca's hand would move toward Ethan unconsciously, then stop. The way Ethan kept checking his phone, looking tense. They were both off, distracted. Something was wrong. "Everything okay?" I asked innocently. "Fine," Rebecca said too quickly. "Just tired." "Work stuff," Ethan added. "Nothing important." I nodded sympathetically. "Well, I'm just glad we're all here together. You two mean everything to me. I want you to know that." Rebecca's eyes got glassy. Ethan looked like he might throw up. We said goodbye around 9. Rebecca and I took a cab back to my apartment. She was quiet the whole ride, staring out the window. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah," she said. "Just thinking." "About what?" "About how lucky I am," she said, turning to look at me. "About how lucky we are, about how I don't want to lose this." "You won't," I said. She kissed me when we got to my apartment. Not a peck, a real kiss, desperate and clinging. We had sex that night, and she cried after. I held her while she sobbed into my chest, not knowing that I was already counting down the hours until her entire life imploded. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too," I lied. Friday morning, Rebecca got the call from her client, the one who'd requested the urgent meeting. They were terminating their contract effective immediately and demanding a full refund for breach of contract. They'd consulted with their legal team and the evidence of plagiarism was undeniable. She called me in hysterics. "Adrian, I don't understand. They're saying I used stock designs, but I didn't. I used some references, but that's normal. Everyone does that. They're saying I could be sued. This could destroy my career." "I'm sure it's a misunderstanding," I said calmly. "Do you want me to come over?" "No, I need to handle this. I need to call my other clients, make sure they haven't heard anything. I'll call you later." She never called me later. Because an hour after that first call, her other 2 major clients contacted her with similar messages: contract termination, potential legal action. Their trust had been violated. Rebecca was a freelancer. Those 3 clients represented 70% of her annual income. Losing them meant financial disaster. But worse than that, in the tight-knit Portland design community, word spread fast. By that evening, she was getting messages from other designers asking if it was true, if she'd really been stealing work. Her reputation was destroyed in a single day. Ethan's collapse took slightly longer, but it was more spectacular. Friday morning, he was called into another meeting at Blackwell Associates. This time, it wasn't just a conversation, it was an interrogation. The executive board had reviewed the anonymous dossier. They'd done their own investigation, pulling project files, interviewing junior associates. Everything I'd compiled was verified. Worse, the licensing board had opened a formal investigation into the residential development. They'd sent engineers to the site to do their own geotechnical analysis. Preliminary findings showed that Ethan's original report had been grossly inadequate. The soil conditions were exactly as unstable as the omitted data suggested. The buildings weren't in immediate danger, but they needed significant remediation work. Work that would cost millions. The homeowners would sue. The development company would sue. Everyone would sue, and Ethan would be at the center of it all. By Friday afternoon, he was suspended pending the outcome of the investigation. By Monday, he'd be fired. Within a month, his architectural license would be revoked. His career, everything he'd built over 8 years, was gone. He called me Friday evening. I was sitting in my apartment watching everything unfold with the detached satisfaction of an engineer watching a controlled demolition proceed exactly as calculated. "Adrian," he said, his voice raw, "I need to talk to you. Something terrible is happening." "What's wrong?" "Can I come over? Please, I need my best friend right now." "Of course," I said. "Come over." He showed up 30 minutes later, looking like he'd aged 10 years. Unshaven, red eyes, hands shaking. He sat on my couch and told me everything about the investigation, the suspension, the potential lawsuits, his license being at risk. "I don't understand," he said. "Someone sent the firm all this documentation, all these files I don't even remember. It's like someone's been building a case against me for months. Who would do this?" "I don't know," I said. "That's crazy. And Rebecca? Did she tell you?" "She's having her own nightmare. All her clients dropped her on the same day. Someone sent them evidence that she was plagiarizing. The same day, Adrian, the same fucking day. This isn't a coincidence." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying someone is targeting us. Someone who wants to destroy us both." He looked at me, his eyes desperate. "You're good at this stuff, at figuring things out. Will you help me? I need to know who did this." I met his eyes. For 8 years, I'd trusted this man with everything. He'd been my partner, my brother. And for the last 8 months, he'd been sleeping with my girlfriend while planning how to minimize the damage when he finally discarded me. "Why would anyone want to destroy you?" I asked quietly. "I don't know. I've been trying to figure it out. Maybe a rival at work? Someone who wanted the partner position? But why Rebecca too? Unless—" He trailed off, his face going pale. "Unless what?" "Unless someone knows," he whispered. "Knows what?" He looked at me for a long moment. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. "Finally," he said, "Rebecca and I need to talk to you about something. We were going to tell you today anyway. That's actually why I came over before everything went to hell. But now I don't know how to—" "Jesus, Adrian, I don't know how to do this." "Do what?" He stood up, pacing my living room. "Rebecca and I have been seeing each other. For a while now. We're in love. We didn't mean for it to happen. We tried to fight it, but we couldn't. We were going to tell you today, ask for your forgiveness, hope that somehow we could all figure this out without losing you completely." "How long?" I asked. My voice was perfectly calm. 8 months. 8 months. "I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry. You're my best friend. You're the best person I know. And I betrayed you in the worst possible way. But I love her, Adrian. I've never felt this way about anyone. And she loves me. We didn't want to hurt you, but we couldn't keep living a lie." I stood up slowly. Ethan stopped pacing, watching me nervously. "You love her?" I said. "Yes. And she loves you." "Yes?" And you've been sleeping with her, planning a life with her for 8 months while I trusted both of you completely. Adrian, you came to my apartment tonight to confess, to ask for my forgiveness. But really, you just wanted permission to take her without feeling guilty about it. You wanted me to absolve you so you could ride off into the sunset together without the inconvenient weight of knowing you destroyed someone who loved you. That's not... But here's the thing, Ethan. I took a step toward him. You're right. Someone is targeting you. Someone has been building a case against you for months. Someone who documented every shortcut you ever took, every corner you cut, every lie you told. Someone who made sure that when your world collapsed, it would be total and irreversible. His face went white. What are you saying? I'm saying I know about the affair. I've known for months. I've read every text message between you and Rebecca. I've watched you sneak around. I've listened to you plan how to tell me, like I was some fragile thing that needed careful handling. I've heard you discuss my emotional state with my girlfriend, deciding together how to minimize the damage to me while you pursued your happiness. Adrian, I'm saying that I sent those dossiers. I destroyed your career and her career. I isolated you both from your support systems. I spent 3 months engineering your complete destruction with the same precision I'd use to design a building. And I did it because you took everything from me, so I decided to take everything from you. Ethan staggered backward like I'd physically hit him. You did this. Every bit of it. But the documentation, the evidence, was all real. I didn't fabricate anything. I just compiled it and sent it to the right people. Everything you're facing, you earned through your own choices. I just made sure those choices had consequences. My career is over. My license, yes, I could be sued for millions. I could go bankrupt. Yes. You did this, knowing what it would do to me? What did you think would happen? I asked. Did you think I'd just shake your hand, wish you well, maybe be the best man at your wedding? Did you think betrayal, this deep, deserved forgiveness? We didn't mean to hurt you. Bullshit, I shouted. The word erupted out of me with 8 months of suppressed rage. You meant exactly to hurt me. You just wanted to hurt me in a way that let you still feel like good people. You wanted to destroy my life while maintaining your own moral superiority. We didn't mean for this to happen. We tried to fight it. We're just so in love we couldn't help ourselves. That's the story you told yourselves so you could sleep at night. But the truth is simpler. You wanted her, she wanted you, and you both decided I was acceptable collateral damage. Ethan's legs gave out. He sat down hard on my couch, his head in his hands. What do you want? From me. You've destroyed everything. What more can you possibly take? I don't want anything from you anymore, I said. I wanted you to know the truth before you and Rebecca tried to start your new life together. I wanted you to understand that actions have consequences, that you can't just use people and discard them without paying a price. My entire career will recover eventually. Maybe not at Blackwell, maybe not in Portland, but you're talented. You'll figure something out. You'll rebuild. And when you do, every time you look at Rebecca, you'll remember what that happiness cost. You'll remember that your love destroyed 2 careers, ended a friendship, and was bought with betrayal and lies. I walked to my door and opened it. Get out! He stood up shakily. Adrian, please. We need to talk about this. There has to be a way. There's nothing to talk about. You and Rebecca wanted me out of your lives. Congratulations. You got your wish. Now get the fuck out of my apartment. He walked to the door, then stopped. I never wanted this. I never wanted to hurt you. Then you should have kept your hands off my girlfriend. He left. I closed the door behind him and locked it. Then I sat down on the floor with my back against the door and felt absolutely nothing, no satisfaction, no vindication, no relief, just emptiness. Rebecca, Called me that night 16 times. I didn't answer. Finally, she showed up at my apartment, pounding on the door. Adrian, Adrian, please, we need to talk. Ethan told me what you did. Please, just open the door. I sat on the other side, listening to her cry and beg and explain. I know you're angry. I know you have every right to be angry. But please, just talk to me. We can fix this. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I love you. I still love you. I never stopped loving you. That was the only time I almost opened the door. Because part of me wanted to believe that she still loved me, that maybe this whole nightmare could be undone, that we could go back to before everything broke. But I knew the truth. She didn't love me. She loved the idea of me, the safe, stable, loyal boyfriend who would always be there while she explored her feelings for someone else. She loved the life we'd built, the comfort and security, but she loved Ethan more. After an hour, she stopped pounding. I heard her slide down the door, sitting on the other side, separated from me by 3 inches of wood. I never wanted it to be like this, she said, her voice thick with tears. It just happened. We tried to stop it. I swear we tried. But I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about Ethan. And I thought if I just waited, if I was just patient, I could figure out how to transition from you to him without destroying you. I thought I was being kind, giving you time. But I was just being a coward. She cried for a while. Then, what you did to us, sending those files, destroying our careers, that's not you. You're not a vengeful person. You're good and kind and you always see the best in people. This isn't who you are. I almost laughed. She still thought she knew me. She still thought I was the person I'd been before I discovered their betrayal. She didn't understand that that person was gone, burned away by 8 months of lies. I'm going to leave now, she finally said. But I'm not giving up on you. I know you're hurt. I know you hate us right now, but eventually you'll forgive us. You'll understand, and we can all move forward. I heard her stand up and walk away. She was wrong, of course. I would never forgive them, and we would never all move forward together. But she'd find that out soon enough. The wedding invitation arrived 6 months later, 6 months of silence, 6 months of Rebecca and Ethan trying to rebuild their lives and their careers while I watched from a distance. 6 months of them apparently deciding that despite everything, despite the professional destruction, despite the betrayal, despite my explicit hatred, they were still going to get married. The audacity of it was almost impressive. I stood in my hallway, staring at that cream envelope with gold embossing, and I felt something crack inside my chest. All the careful numbness I'd cultivated over the past 6 months shattered like glass. They were actually doing it. After everything, they were going to have their happy ending. I opened the invitation. Formal script announced that Rebecca Martinez and Ethan Cole requested my presence at their wedding ceremony. As if I would come, as if I'd stand there and watch them make vows to each other while I pretended the past 3 years meant nothing. But there was a handwritten note tucked inside, in Rebecca's handwriting. Adrian, I know this is the last thing you want to receive. I know you hate us, but we're inviting you anyway because your presence in our lives mattered. It still matters. You were Ethan's best friend for 8 years. You were my partner for 2. We don't expect you to come, but we wanted you to know that we think about you. We hope you're healing. We hope you found happiness. And we hope that someday you can find peace with what happened. We never stopped caring about you. Ah. I read that note 5 times. Then I did something I hadn't done in 6 months. I laughed. Not a bitter laugh, not an angry laugh. Just pure, genuine amusement at the absolute delusion required to write those words and think they meant anything. They thought about me. They hoped I was healing. They never stopped caring about me. They'd moved on with their lives, planning their wedding, building their future together. and they'd convinced themselves that their occasional guilty thoughts about me somehow made them good people, that their hope for my healing somehow absolved them of the damage they'd caused. They wanted peace. They wanted closure. They wanted to get married without the messy complication of knowing they'd destroyed someone to get there. I looked at that invitation and I realized I wasn't done. The career destruction had been satisfying, but incomplete. They'd both found new work, Ethan at a smaller firm in Seattle, Rebecca picking up freelance projects under a different professional name. They'd been damaged, but they'd survived. They'd learned to be more careful, to hide their shortcuts better. And now they wanted to celebrate their love with a wedding, surrounded by friends and family who would toast to their happiness, while I was expected to just, what? Move on? Forget? No, I destroyed their careers. Now I would destroy their relationship. Not by revealing some new scandal, not by digging up more dirt. That would be too easy, too clean. They'd just band together against a common enemy, their love strengthened by adversity. Instead, I would poison the relationship from within. I would make them doubt each other. I would plant the seeds of the same betrayal they'd inflicted on me. But this time they'd do it to each other. I had 4 months until the wedding. That was plenty of time. Step 1 was establishing contact. I needed them to think I'd forgiven them, that I'd moved on and was ready to be civil, so I did something they'd never expect. I RSVP'd yes to the wedding. Then I called Ethan. He answered on the 4th ring, wary. Adrian? Hey, I said, keeping my voice neutral. I got the invitation. Long silence. Then, and I'm coming? What? I'm coming to the wedding, if the offer still stands? I don't understand. I've been in therapy, I lied smoothly, working through a lot of stuff. And my therapist thinks that seeing you both happy together might give me closure, help me accept what happened and move forward with my own life. Adrian, I don't know if that's... I'm not going to cause a scene. I'm not going to object when they ask if... Anyone has reason why you shouldn't be wed. I just want to be there, see you both happy, and let that be the final chapter of our story. Can you give me that? Another long silence. I could practically hear him calculating, trying to figure out if this was a trap. But ultimately his ego won. He wanted me there. He wanted to prove that he could have it all, Rebecca, the happy ending, and even my blessing. Okay, he said finally. Yeah, of course, that means a lot, Adrian, really. I'll see you in 4 months. I hung up before he could say anything else. Phase 2 began the next day. I created a fake online profile, female, attractive, professional. A structural engineer from Seattle named Miranda Keegan. I made sure the profile was detailed, believable, with photos stolen from a real engineer's professional website, someone who looked similar enough that Ethan wouldn't immediately recognize them, but different enough that direct comparison would be impossible. Then, Miranda started engaging with Ethan's professional posts on LinkedIn. Thoughtful comments on his articles, insights on shared projects. She was smart, impressive, and clearly interested in his work. After 2 weeks, she sent him a direct message. I know this is forward, but I'm going to be in Portland next month for a conference. Would you want to grab coffee and talk about the harbor project you mentioned? I'm working on something similar and could use your expertise. Ethan took the bait. Of course he did. Miranda was professional interest, not romantic. It was just networking. Rebecca would understand. They met for coffee, except Miranda cancelled last minute with an apologetic message about a client emergency, but she suggested they chat over video call instead, and Ethan agreed. I'd hired an actress for this part, someone who looked vaguely like the photos, who could play the role of an engineer convincingly based on the script I'd given her. She wore a ring on her left hand, mentioned a long-term partner casually. Everything about the interaction was professional and above board, but over the next few weeks the conversations got more personal. Miranda mentioned relationship struggles. Her partner didn't understand her career ambitions. Ethan commiserated. He knew what it was like to balance personal and professional life. Miranda asked about his wedding. Ethan talked about Rebecca, but with less enthusiasm than he should have had. "Do you ever wonder," Miranda asked during one video call, "if you're making the right choice? Not about Rebecca specifically, but about getting married at all? Committing to one person forever when you're only 32? "Sometimes," Ethan admitted. "But that's normal, right? Everyone has doubts." "I suppose, but there's a difference between normal cold feet and genuine uncertainty." I made sure Rebecca found out about these conversations. Not directly, that would be too obvious. Instead, I sent an anonymous message to her Instagram from a burner account. "Did you know your fiancé has been having late-night video calls with a woman in Seattle? Might want to ask him about Miranda." Rebecca did ask him. Ethan explained, truthfully, that Miranda was a professional contact, nothing more. He showed Rebecca the messages, which were indeed professional. Rebecca felt guilty for doubting him, but the seed was planted. Simultaneously, I created a male profile. David Chen, a graphic designer from Portland. David started following Rebecca on Instagram, commenting on her work with genuine appreciation. Rebecca, starved for professional validation after her career implosion, responded enthusiastically. They started messaging about design philosophy, then about life. David mentioned his own struggles with his career, his own mistakes. Rebecca opened up about what had happened to her, the plagiarism accusations, the destroyed reputation, the struggle to rebuild. "Do you think you deserved it?" David asked. "What?" "The consequences. Do you think what you did was bad enough to warrant losing everything?" I don't know. I made mistakes, but everyone makes mistakes. What happened to me felt disproportionate." "Maybe someone was punishing you for something else." "What do you mean?" "I mean that the plagiarism stuff, the timing of it all, it seems personal, like someone wanted to hurt you specifically." I could see her thinking about it through our messages. She'd never fully believed the plagiarism exposure was coincidental with Ethan's own professional troubles. She'd suspected me, obviously, but she'd never had proof. Now David was confirming her suspicions without directly accusing anyone. "If someone did deliberately destroy your career," David wrote, "would that change how you feel about what you did to them? Would it make you angrier, or would it make you think you deserved it?" "I don't know," Rebecca typed back. "Both, maybe." Over the next 6 weeks, I cultivated both relationships. Miranda became Ethan's confidant for his pre-wedding anxieties. David became Rebecca's outlet for her guilt and confusion. And slowly, carefully, I started introducing poison. Miranda asked Ethan, "Has Rebecca ever talked about the guy she dated before you? The one who got hurt?" "Adrian?" "Not really. She feels terrible about it." "Does she? Because from what you've told me, she seems more focused on rebuilding her career than on making amends." "That's not fair. She's been through a lot." "You both have, but you talk about him with guilt. She talks about him like he's an obstacle she's moved past." David asked Rebecca, "Does Ethan ever bring up his best friend, the one whose girlfriend you fell for?" "Sometimes." "Why?" "I'm just wondering if he's marrying you out of love or out of stubbornness. Like, you two went through hell to be together. Maybe he feels like he has to see it through now, even if he's not sure anymore." "That's not true. Ethan loves me." "I'm sure he does." "But does he love you more than he loved his friendship with Adrian? Have you ever asked him if he regrets it?" The questions festered. Rebecca started watching Ethan more carefully. Ethan started questioning Rebecca's commitment. They had their first real fight 6 weeks before the wedding, about something trivial, but underneath it was all the doubt I'd been planting. Then I escalated. I had Miranda send Ethan a late-night message. "I need to tell you something. I haven't been entirely honest with you about why I reached out. I recognized your name from a story a colleague told me about an engineer who threw away his career and his best friend for a woman. I wanted to see if you were really that person, if you were really capable of that kind of betrayal. And now that I know you, I don't understand how you did it. You seem like a good person, but good people don't destroy their friends for their own happiness." Then she blocked him before he could respond. Ethan spiraled. He tried to find Miranda online, but the profile disappeared. He tried to explain to Rebecca why he was upset, but he couldn't without admitting how much he'd confided in a stranger. Rebecca grew suspicious of his secrecy. Meanwhile, David sent Rebecca a message. "I need to come clean about something. My name isn't really David. I'm actually a friend of Adrian's. He doesn't know I'm talking to you. He'd probably kill me if he knew, but I've watched him suffer for over a year because of what you and Ethan did. He put on a brave face, but he's destroyed inside. And I just wanted you to know that before you go through with this wedding, you should understand the real cost of your happiness." Then he blocked her too. Rebecca tried to reach out, but David was gone. She was left with the message, with the guilt, with the growing certainty that the happiness she'd built with Ethan was constructed on someone else's ruins. 2 weeks before the wedding, Rebecca and Ethan had their worst fight yet. She accused him of not really loving her, of just being committed to the idea of them. He accused her of using him to escape her guilt about Adrian. They both said things they couldn't take back. They almost called off the wedding that night, but they didn't, because they'd invested too much. They'd lost too much. Cancelling the wedding would mean admitting that it had all been for nothing. The betrayal, the destroyed friendship, the damaged careers. So they patched things up with apologies and promises, and they moved forward because moving forward was the only option that didn't mean complete failure. I watched all of this unfold through Rebecca's Instagram. She'd never blocked me. Through mutual friends, through careful observation. And I felt satisfied in a way I hadn't when I destroyed their careers. Because now they were exactly where I had been. Trapped in a relationship poisoned by doubt, unable to trust each other completely, wondering if the person they loved was telling them the truth or just telling them what they wanted to hear. They would get married, they would say their vows, but they would never be happy. Every time they looked at each other, they would remember the doubt, the fights, the anonymous messages that suggested their love was built on something rotten. And I would be there in the audience, watching them promise forever to each other, while knowing that forever was already contaminated. So the wedding day arrived, October 15th, overcast and threatening rain, typical Oregon weather. The venue was a converted barn in Yamhill County, rustic and Instagram perfect. Exactly the kind of place Rebecca had always said she wanted to get married. I wore a suit. I drove out there alone, GPS guiding me through wine country to a venue I'd never been to. The parking lot was already full. They'd invited maybe 100 people. I recognized some faces from our shared history. Mutual. Friends who'd chosen their side in the divorce, Ethan's family, Rebecca's sister who'd always disliked me. Nobody was expecting me to actually show up. I could see the shock on faces as I walked in, found a seat in the back row. People whispered. Someone, I think it was Ethan's brother, started toward me, probably to ask me to leave, but Ethan caught his eye and shook his head. No drama, that was the unspoken rule. Whatever else happened, there would be no drama at the wedding. I sat quietly, and watched the guests arrive. Rebecca's mother, who'd loved me until she didn't. Ethan's father, who'd once told me I was the best friend his son ever had. Colleagues, friends, people who'd been at dinner parties and game nights and birthday celebrations back when we were all still pretending to be happy. The ceremony started at 3. Music played, something classical I didn't recognize. The wedding party walked down the aisle, bridesmaids in dusty blue, groomsmen in grey. Ethan stood at the altar, looking nervous, handsome, like the protagonist of a romance movie, finally getting his happy ending. Then Rebecca appeared. She was beautiful. I had to give her that. White dress, simple and elegant, her dark hair swept up with small flowers woven through it. She walked down the aisle on her father's arm and everyone stood, and I could see Ethan's face light up when he saw her. For a moment I felt something twist in my chest. She should have been walking toward me. That should have been our wedding. We should have been the ones standing at that altar, promising each other forever, while people who loved us cried happy tears. But that future had died 18 months ago when I found out about their betrayal. And watching them now, I realized something I hadn't expected to feel. I was glad it was them and not me, because they were trapped now. Married to each other, bound by vows and legal contracts and the weight of everything they'd sacrificed to be together. They couldn't leave each other without admitting that it had all been a terrible mistake. They were stuck. But I was free. The ceremony proceeded. The officiant talked about love conquering all, about finding your person, about commitment in the face of adversity. Rebecca and Ethan exchanged vows they'd written themselves, promising loyalty and honesty and forever. The irony was almost too much. Do you, Ethan Cole, take Rebecca Martinez to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. Do you, Rebecca Martinez, take Ethan Cole to be your lawfully wedded husband? There was a pause, just a fraction of a second, barely noticeable. But I noticed. She glanced out at the audience, her eyes finding mine in the back row. We made eye contact. I didn't smile, I didn't frown. I just looked at her steadily and I watched her remember everything. The lies, the sneaking around, the destroyed friendship, the anonymous messages, the doubt. I do, she said finally. Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. They kissed. People applauded. Someone, one of the bridesmaids, was crying. Music swelled. Rebecca and Ethan walked back down the aisle together, smiling, and neither of them looked happy. They looked relieved that it was over. I left during the applause, before the reception, before anyone could corner me and ask why I'd come. I'd seen what I needed to see. I'd confirmed what I'd suspected. They were married, but they weren't happy. And they never would be. I drove back to Portland as the sun set, the sky turning orange and purple behind me. I put on music, something loud and meaningless, and I let myself feel everything I'd been suppressing for 18 months. Grief, rage, betrayal, loss. And underneath it all, something else. Something quieter, relief. For 18 months, I'd been consumed by revenge. Every decision I made was about hurting them, about making them pay for what they'd done. I'd become someone I barely recognized, calculating, cold, willing to destroy people I'd once loved. But sitting in my car on Highway 99, watching the landscape blur past, I realized the revenge hadn't fixed anything. Destroying their careers hadn't made me feel better. Poisoning their relationship hadn't healed my wounds. Watching them marry each other while miserable hadn't brought me peace. It had just made me emptier. I thought about the past 8 years. Meeting Ethan on the first day of grad school, building a friendship I'd thought would last forever, falling in love with Rebecca, believing in a future that had never actually existed. I thought about the version of myself I'd been before the betrayal. Optimistic, trusting, maybe naive, but fundamentally decent. That person was gone. Ethan and Rebecca had killed him when they chose themselves over our friendship. But I'd finished the job by becoming someone whose primary purpose was causing pain. I pulled into a rest stop and sat, there in the dark, engine off, watching other cars come and go. Families on road trips, couples heading home. People living their lives without the weight of betrayal and revenge dragging them down. I wanted that. Not forgiveness. I would never forgive them. Not reconciliation. We would never be friends again. But freedom. Freedom from the consuming need to make them suffer. Freedom to build something new that wasn't defined by what I'd lost. I thought about the wedding invitation sitting on my passenger seat. Rebecca's handwritten note. "We hope you found happiness." I hadn't found happiness, but maybe I could start looking for it now. I pulled out my phone and deleted everything. The fake profiles, the email accounts I'd used to send the dossiers, the spyware on Rebecca's phone that I'd never uninstalled, the photos I'd saved of them together, the screenshots of their texts, the evidence I'd compiled of their betrayal, all of it, gone. Then I blocked both their numbers. Then I blocked them on social media. Deleted our group chats and old photos and anything that tied me to the life we'd shared. I was cutting them out completely, not out of hatred, but out of necessity. I couldn't move forward while constantly looking back. A year later, I was living in Seattle, new city, new job at a top architecture firm, new apartment with a view of the Sound. I'd left Morrison Hayes shortly after the wedding, unable to stay in Portland, surrounded by memories and mutual friends who kept trying to get me to talk about what had happened. Seattle was clean. Nobody here knew about Ethan or Rebecca or the implosion of my life. I was just Adrian Westfield, 33-year-old structural engineer, competent and professional and completely unremarkable. I dated occasionally, nothing serious. I'd learned to be more cautious, to pay attention to inconsistencies, to trust slowly. It made me worse at relationships, but better at protecting myself. I figured that was a fair trade. I hadn't thought about Ethan and Rebecca in months when I ran into Ethan's sister Nicole at a coffee shop near my office. She was in Seattle for work, and she recognized me immediately. "Adrian, oh my God, I didn't know you'd moved to Seattle." We grabbed coffee, awkwardly at first, but Nicole had always been straightforward. She asked me directly, "Are you okay? After everything?" "I'm fine," I said. "Better, actually. The distance helped." "Good. You deserve better than what happened." She hesitated, then added, "You probably don't want to know this, but Ethan and Rebecca are getting divorced." I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, no pleasure. Just a vague curiosity. "What happened?" "I don't know all the details. Ethan doesn't talk about it much. But they were only married for 6 months before Rebecca moved out. I think they finally admitted what everyone else already knew, that they were a mistake. That whatever they had wasn't strong enough to survive what they did to get it." "How's Ethan doing?" "Honestly, not great. He's still in Seattle, working at that smaller firm, but he's different, more withdrawn. He told me once that he thinks about you all the time, about what he destroyed. I think he finally understands what he lost." We finished our coffee and said goodbye, and I went back to my office. I sat at my desk looking at structural calculations for a high-rise, and I thought about Ethan understanding what he'd lost. Good. Not because I wanted him to suffer, I'd moved past that, but because actions should have consequences, because betraying someone who trusted you completely should leave a mark, because you shouldn't get to destroy people and walk away unscathed. That night I got home and opened my laptop. I hadn't written anything personal in years, but I started typing, not for publication, not for anyone else, just for me. I wrote down everything, the friendship, the betrayal, the revenge, the hollowness afterward. I wrote about the person I'd been and the person I'd become and the person I was trying to be now. When I finished, it was 4 in the morning. 50,000 words of catharsis spilled onto the page. I saved the document, backed it up, and titled it, The Architecture of Ruin. Then I closed the laptop and went to bed. I still think about them sometimes, Ethan and Rebecca. I wonder if they're happy now, separated and living their own lives. I wonder if Rebecca ever thinks about the messages from David and realizes they were from me. I wonder if Ethan ever figured out that Miranda was my creation. I wonder if they understand that the poison I introduced to their relationship was just a reflection of the poison they'd introduced to mine. But mostly, I don't think about them at all. I think about the project I'm leading. A 40-story residential tower that will be the tallest building in South Lake Union when it's complete. I think about the woman I've been seeing for 2 months, a lawyer named Catherine, who makes me laugh and calls me out when I'm being too rigid. I think about the life I'm building, one careful decision at a time. The past will always be there. The betrayal will always have happened. I will never be the naive, trusting person I was before I discovered their affair. That version of Adrian died and he's not coming back. But maybe that's okay. Maybe the person I am now, cautious but not bitter, guarded but not closed, scarred but not broken, is who I needed to become. Not because of what they did to me, but in spite of it. I designed their destruction with precision. I calculated every load, every stress point, every failure mode. I brought their lives crashing down exactly as I'd planned. And then I walked away because revenge, I learned, is a hollow victory. It doesn't heal wounds. It doesn't bring back what you lost. It doesn't make you whole. The only thing that makes you whole is building something new. Something that's yours alone. Something no one can take away because you constructed it with your own hands, on solid ground, with foundations that go deep enough to weather any storm. I'm building that now. Slowly, carefully, one day at a time. And if Ethan and Rebecca are doing the same, separately, in their own lives, good. We all deserve a second chance at happiness, even if we don't get it with the people we thought we'd spend forever with. 3 years after the wedding, I'm standing on the observation deck of the building I designed. It's completed now, occupied, a monument to the fact that I survived what they did to me and came out the other side. My phone rings. Unknown number. I almost don't answer, but something makes me pick up. Adrian? It's Ethan's voice. I haven't heard it in 3 years. I could hang up, I probably should. But curiosity wins. What do you want? I'm in Seattle. I saw the building, the one you designed. It's incredible. Congratulations. Thanks. Long silence. Then, I need to tell you something. I know you probably don't care, but I need to say it anyway. You were right about everything. Rebecca and I weren't in love, not the way we told ourselves we were. We were in love with the idea of each other, with the drama and the secrecy and the feeling that we were living some great romance. But when we actually had to live together, be married, be normal, we couldn't do it. We fell apart in 6 months. I know, your sister told me. Did she tell you that I've been in therapy? That my therapist says I have a pattern of self-sabotage, of destroying good things because I'm terrified of actually being happy? No, she didn't mention that. I destroyed the best friendship I ever had for something that wasn't even real. And then I made it worse by trying to believe it was real, by marrying Rebecca and pretending we were something we weren't. I'm calling because I want to apologize, not because I expect forgiveness. I don't, but because you deserve to hear it. I look out at the Seattle skyline, at the city lights reflecting off the water, at the life I've built. Okay, I say. Apology heard. That's it. What else do you want me to say, Ethan? That I forgive you? I don't. That I understand why you did it? I don't. That we can be friends again? We can't. You called to apologize, and I'm acknowledging that you apologized. But that doesn't change anything. I know, I miss you, man. I miss my best friend. Your best friend doesn't exist anymore. You killed him when you betrayed him. I know. Good. Now you know how it feels. I hang up before he can respond. Then I turn off my phone and stand there on the observation deck, 40 stories above the city. And I feel something I haven't felt in years. Peace, not forgiveness, not reconciliation, not closure in any traditional sense, just peace. The kind that comes from finally letting go of something you've been carrying for too long. The kind that comes from building something beautiful out of the ruins of something broken. I stay up there until the sky starts to lighten, watching the city wake up, watching people start their days in the building I created. And I think about the 16-year-old version of myself who decided to become an engineer, who fell in love with the idea of building things that would outlast him. That kid would be proud of this building, and maybe, eventually, he'd be proud of me too, for surviving, for rebuilding, for refusing to let betrayal define the rest of my life. I ride the elevator back down and walk out into the morning, into my future, into whatever comes next. And for the first time in 4 years, I feel like, maybe, just maybe, I'm going to be okay. And the last time I see Rebecca is purely by accident. I'm in Portland for a conference, walking through the Pearl District on my way to lunch when I literally bump into her coming out of a coffee shop. "Adrian," she says, shocked. "I didn't know you were in town." "Conference," I explain. "I'm leaving tomorrow." We stand there awkwardly on the sidewalk while people flow around us. She looks different, older, tired, but maybe more real than the version of her I remember. Less polished, more human. "I heard about your building in Seattle," she says. "It's incredible. You always said you'd designed something that mattered." "Thanks." "I also heard that Ethan called you. He told me about it afterward, how you hung up on him. I don't blame you." "Good." She takes a breath. "Can I say something?" "Not an apology. You've heard enough apologies. Just an observation." "Okay. What we did to you was unforgivable. I know that. I've known it from the beginning, even when I was trying to convince myself otherwise. We destroyed something pure because we were selfish and cowardly, and you punished us for it in ways we probably deserved. The careers, the anonymous messages, all of it. I know it was you. I figured it out eventually. I don't confirm or deny. I just wait. But here's the thing, Adrian. The worst punishment wasn't anything you did to us. It was that you moved on. You built this incredible life in Seattle. You designed that tower. You found happiness without us. While Ethan and I fell apart trying to justify what we'd done, you just left. You didn't need us anymore. That hurt worse than anything you deliberately did. I didn't move on to hurt you, I say. I moved on to survive. I know, that's why it worked. We stand there a moment longer. Then she says, "I hope you're happy, Adrian. Genuinely. I hope you found someone who deserves you." "I hope you find that too," I say. And I mean it. She walks away. I watch her disappear into the Portland afternoon, and I feel the final thread connecting me to that past life snap cleanly. That's it. The end of the story. No dramatic confrontation, no final revenge, no cathartic moment of forgiveness. Just two people who used to matter to each other, acknowledging that they don't anymore. I go to lunch, I attend my conference sessions, I fly back to Seattle that night. And I don't think about Rebecca or Ethan again for a long, long time. 5 years after the betrayal, I'm 35 years old. I've designed 3 major buildings now. I'm a senior partner at my firm. I've been dating Catherine seriously for a year. and I'm thinking about proposing, not because I need to prove anything or because I'm trying to replace what I lost, but because I love her and she loves me and we want to build a life together. I tell her everything on a weekend trip to the San Juan Islands. The whole story, Ethan, Rebecca, the betrayal, the revenge, the destruction, the hollowness afterward. She listens without interrupting, and when I finish, she's quiet for a long time. "That's dark," she finally says. "I know." "Are you still that person? The one who would destroy people? Who hurt him?" "No," I say. "That person existed for about 1.5 years. Then I killed him when I deleted all the evidence and moved to Seattle. He served his purpose." "Which was?" "Teaching me that revenge doesn't fix anything, it just makes you empty in a different way." "Good," she says, "because I like who you are now. The slightly paranoid engineer who checks his girlfriend's location sometimes but feels guilty about it. The guy who still has nightmares about betrayal but works through them instead of letting them consume him. That guy I can build a life with. The revenge guy, that guy scares me." "He scares me too," I admit. She kisses me. "Then let's make sure he never comes back." 2 months later, I propose. Not with a ring I bought to make my ex-girlfriend's current boyfriend uncomfortable, but with one I chose because it reminded me of Catherine. She says yes. We plan a small wedding, just close friends and family. I don't invite Ethan, I don't invite anyone. From that old life. At the reception, Catherine's father gives a toast. "To my daughter and her incredible husband, who proves that sometimes the best revenge is building a life so good that your enemies become irrelevant." Everyone laughs. Catherine squeezes my hand under the table, and I realize he's right. The best revenge wasn't destroying Ethan's career. It wasn't poisoning his relationship with Rebecca. It wasn't watching them crumble under the weight of their own choices. The best revenge was this, building something beautiful without them, proving that their betrayal didn't break me permanently, becoming someone who could trust and love again, even after learning how badly trust can be violated. They thought I would never recover. They thought destroying me was an acceptable price for their happiness. They thought I was weak enough that I'd just crumble and disappear. They were wrong. And now they get to spend the rest of their lives knowing that while they're great, romance collapsed in 6 months. I built a life that lasted. That mattered. That was real. That's the revenge that sticks. Not pain, but proof. Proof that they were wrong about me. Proof that I was stronger than their betrayal. Proof that happiness built on someone else's destruction never lasts, but happiness built on solid foundation endures. 10 years later, I'm 41. Catherine and I have 2 kids. We live in a house I designed, on land we bought together. My career has flourished. I'm known in the industry as someone who never cuts corners, who always prioritizes safety and integrity over convenience. My reputation is built on being someone people can trust. It's ironic, considering who I was for that 1.5 years in my early 30s. But maybe that's exactly why I'm so committed to integrity now, because I know what it looks like when it crumbles. I get an email out of the blue. The subject line is just, "I hope you're well." It's from Ethan. I almost delete it without reading, but curiosity, or maybe something else, makes me open it. "Adrian, I know I have no right to contact you. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. But I'm writing anyway because my therapist says I need to complete this step of my recovery, and more importantly, because you deserve to know how your actions changed my life. I'm 40 now, still an architect, though I'll never have the career I could have had. I'm working at a small, sustainable design firm in Boulder, doing work I believe in, on a scale I can handle. I'm married, not to Rebecca. She and I haven't spoken in 7 years. My wife knows everything about my past, and she married me anyway. I'm also in recovery, not from drugs or alcohol, but from what my therapist calls a pattern of moral compromise. For years, I cut corners because I could, because my charm let me get away with it, because I didn't think consequences applied to me. What you did, exposing my professional misconduct, forcing me to face the real implications of my shortcuts, destroyed me. But it also saved me. If you hadn't sent that dossier, I would have kept cutting corners until someone got hurt. Eventually, one of my structural compromises would have resulted in an actual failure. People could have been injured or killed. And it would have been my fault because I was too arrogant to do things right. You forced me to face what I was, and yes, it was brutal. Yes, it destroyed my career and my reputation and my relationship. But it also forced me to rebuild from the ground up, this time with actual integrity. I'm not saying I deserved it. I don't know that anyone deserves to have their life systematically dismantled. But I'm saying it changed me in ways I desperately needed to change. I destroyed our friendship for a relationship that was doomed from the start. I betrayed you in the worst possible way, and you made sure I understood the cost of that betrayal. We're even now, I think. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking to be friends again. I'm just asking you to know that the revenge worked. You broke me, and then eventually I put myself back together into someone better. I hope you found your own peace. I hope you built a life you're proud of. I hope you're happy, because despite everything, I still care about you. Not as a friend, I lost that right, but as someone who knew you once, who loved you once, who destroyed you once, and who will spend the rest of his life trying to be worthy of the friendship we had. Take care of yourself, Adrian. Ethan. I read the email 3 times, then I close my laptop and go find Catherine. Ethan emailed me, I tell her. What did he say? I summarize the message. When I finish, she asks, how do you feel? I don't know. Are you going to respond? I think about it. I think about the 41-year-old man I am now, looking back at the 29-year-old who discovered his best friend was sleeping with his girlfriend. I think about the 1.5 years I spent consumed by revenge and the 8 years since I walked away from it. No, I decide, I'm not going to respond. Because you're still angry? Because there's nothing left to say. He apologized. He acknowledged what he did. He even acknowledged what I did in return. But responding would just reopen something that's finally closed. We're not friends. We'll never be friends, and that's okay. You sure? I'm sure. That night, I archived the email. I don't delete it. Maybe someday I'll want to look back and remember, but I don't respond to it either. Ethan gets to live with the uncertainty of whether I read it, whether I forgave him, whether his apology mattered, because that's the final piece of the revenge, I realize. Not answering, not giving him closure, letting him sit with the discomfort of not knowing, the same way he made me sit with the discomfort of betrayal for 8 months while he planned how to tell me. It's petty, maybe, but it's also proportionate. And more importantly, it's the last thought I give to any of it. After that night, I don't think about Ethan's email again. I don't obsess over his words or wonder if I should have responded differently. I just let it go, because I have a life now, a real one, a good one. A life built on solid ground with people who chose me, who stayed, who didn't decide I was acceptable collateral damage in their pursuit of happiness. That's what I wanted all along, really. Not revenge, not destruction, not to hurt them the way they hurt me, just to build something that lasted. And I did. 21 years later, I'm 55 years old. My daughter is graduating from architecture school, following in her old man's footsteps. My son is a paramedic in Denver. Catherine and I have been married for 23 years. We've built a life that feels earned, solid, unshakable. I haven't thought about Ethan or Rebecca in years when I get a phone call from Nicole. I almost don't recognize her name when it appears on my phone. We haven't spoken in over a decade. Adrian, it's Nicole, Ethan's sister. Nicole, hi, is everything okay? Not really. Ethan died last week. Heart attack. He was 54. The words don't land immediately. Ethan is dead. My former best friend, the person I once loved like a brother and then hated with equal intensity, is just gone. I'm sorry, I say, because what else do you say? Thank you. The funeral is this Saturday in Boulder. I know it's a lot to ask, but I thought you'd want to know. Maybe even want to come. I don't know if that's appropriate. Adrian, listen. I know what happened between you two. Ethan told me everything eventually, the betrayal, your revenge, all of it. But I also know that he spent the last 20 years of his life trying to be the person he should have been when you knew him. He stayed sober. He never cut corners professionally again. He was a good husband and father. And right before he died, he was working on a project he wanted to dedicate to you. What kind of project? A sustainable housing development for families recovering from domestic violence. He called it the Westfield Project. He was going to reach out to you about it to ask if you'd consult on the structural design. He wanted to work with you again one last time, even if you said no. I sit down heavily. He named it after me? After you, yes, because he said you taught him that buildings should be built right, even when no one's watching, even when cutting corners would be easier. That was his redemption project, Adrian. His way of proving he'd learned the lesson you taught him. I don't know what to say to that, Nicole continues. You don't owe him anything. You don't owe me anything. But if you want closure, real closure, not the kind you get from revenge, maybe you should come. See who he became. Say goodbye to the friend he used to be, I tell her. I'll think about it. That night I talked to Catherine. Do I go? Do you want to? I don't know. Part of me thinks it's pointless. He's dead. Nothing I do or don't do changes that. But another part of me wonders if this is the end of the story, if I need to see it through. Then go, she says. Not for him, for yourself. Put the final period on that chapter and close it forever. So I go. The funeral is small, maybe 30 people. I recognize some faces from decades ago. Ethan's parents, his brother, Nicole. Rebecca is there, which I should have expected. She's 53 now, with grey in her hair and lines around her eyes. She's with someone, a man I don't recognize, and they're holding hands. She sees me and her eyes widen. We don't speak. What would we say? The service is simple. People talk about Ethan the father, Ethan the husband, Ethan the architect, who cared about sustainability and ethics. His wife, a woman named Jennifer, whom I've never met, gives a eulogy about the man she married, a man who was honest about his past mistakes and worked every day to be better than he'd been. Ethan told me once, Jennifer says, that he destroyed the most important friendship of his life because he was selfish and short-sighted. He said that mistake defined him, and that everything he did afterward was an attempt to earn forgiveness he knew he'd never receive. But maybe that's what redemption is, not earning forgiveness, but becoming someone worthy of it anyway. After the service, I stand by his grave as people drift away. Rebecca approaches me carefully. Adrian. Rebecca. I didn't think you'd come. I almost didn't. I'm sorry for everything. I know I said it before, but I need to say it again. What we did was unforgivable. Yes, I agree. It was. Did you ever forgive him? No, but I stopped hating him. That's not the same as forgiveness, but it's something. She nods. I stopped hating myself about 5 years ago. Therapy helped. So did making peace with the fact that I'll never be the person I was before we hurt you. That person is gone. I had to build someone new. How'd that work out? Better than I expected. I'm remarried, happy even. I do design work for non-profits now. Nothing glamorous, but it feels meaningful. I'm not the same person I was, but maybe that's not a bad thing. Good for you, I say, and I mean it. We stand there in silence for a moment. Then she says, he loved you, you know, even after everything. He told me once that losing you was the worst thing he'd ever done, worse than any professional failure or personal mistake. You were his best friend, and he destroyed that for something that couldn't even last a year. I know. Do you think if we'd all made different choices, we could have, I don't know, remained friends somehow? No, I say, honestly. What you and Ethan had, whatever it was, couldn't coexist with our friendship. You had to choose, and you did. And that choice had consequences for all of us. I know, Nicole approaches as Rebecca walks away. Thank you for coming, she says. I'm still not sure why I did. Because you needed to see that he became someone different, that your revenge, if that's what it was, actually worked in a way you didn't expect. You didn't just destroy him. You rebuilt him into someone better. That wasn't my intention. Maybe not, but it was the result. The Westfield project is moving forward, by the way. Jennifer wants to see it completed in his honor. She asked if you'd be willing to consult. I think about it, a housing project for families recovering from trauma, designed with integrity and care, named after me by a man who spent 20 years trying to earn back something he'd lost forever. I'll do it, I decide. Not for Ethan, but for the families who live there. That's all he would have wanted. I work on the Westfield project for the next 2 years. I never charge for my consulting. I design the structural systems with the same meticulous attention I'd give to any building, making sure everything is sound, safe, sustainable. I work with Jennifer and Ethan's team, people who remember him fondly as the ethical, careful architect he became in his later years. They never know that I'm the reason he had to become that way. They don't know about the dossier, the destroyed career, the revenge. To them, I'm just Adrian Westfield, renowned structural engineer, generously donating his time to a worthy project. The project completes on a warm spring day, 24 units of affordable housing, designed to be safe and welcoming for families rebuilding their lives. At the dedication ceremony, Jennifer gives a speech about Ethan's vision. Then she invites me to say a few words. I stand in front of people who don't know our history and I say, Ethan Cole was a complicated man. He made mistakes, he paid for them, and then he spent years becoming someone who wouldn't make them again. This building represents what he learned, that structures, like people, need to be built on solid foundations, that you can't cut corners without consequences, that doing things right, even when it's harder, is the only way to build something that lasts. I hope the families who live here find the stability and safety they deserve, and I hope Ethan, wherever he is, knows that his final project was done right. That night, driving home, I feel something shift, the weight I didn't realize I'd still been carrying, the weight of betrayal and revenge and unfinished business, finally lifts. I forgave them, I realize, not because they earned it, not because they deserved it, but because holding on to it wasn't serving me anymore. The anger had curdled into something pointless years ago, and I'd been carrying it out of habit rather than need. Ethan and Rebecca destroyed my life. I destroyed theirs in return. We were even, and now Ethan was dead, and Rebecca had rebuilt herself into someone different, and I had a life I loved with people who chose me. The story was over. Finally, completely, irrevocably over. I'm 62 years old now, thinking about retirement. Catherine and I are planning to travel, all the places we always meant to visit but never had time for. Our kids are adults with their own lives. The buildings I designed still stand, solid and safe, monuments to a career built on integrity. Sometimes I think about that first day of grad school, meeting Ethan in structural systems analysis. I think about the friendship we built, the partnership we planned, the future we imagined. I think about Rebecca and how I thought she was forever. It was all so fragile. Years of trust destroyed in an instant, a lifetime of possibilities reduced to rubble. But from those ruins, I built something else. A different life, a better life maybe. Not because the betrayal made me stronger, that's a lie.